Am I not supposed to feel more stressed about this? Because we've been taught in order to look productive, in order to look successful, in order to feel successful, maybe that comes from like being on the go all the time, by pushing through, by not sleeping. So that becomes the norm. But what if it was the opposite? What if we could relax into life? What if we could still be successful and productive, but just from that softer yin energy and not that yang masculine energy that we've been taught to live in?
Today, I'm sitting down with one of my absolute favorite people and one of my good friends that I voice note when I am moving through some of my toughest moments, Dr. Sonya Jensen. She is a person who always helps me connect the dots between what I'm feeling and what my body is trying to tell me. And that's exactly what I want this conversation to feel like for you. Like two friends on the couch talking through the real stuff that we all navigate, the emotions, the messiness, and the meaning behind it all. Because we all need and deserve someone in our lives who helps us find the beauty inside what doesn't always feel so good. Dr. Sonya Jensen is a naturopathic doctor, women's health expert, and author of Heal Your Hormones, Reclaim Yourself. She is a storyteller at heart who blends ancient wisdom, modern science, and raw honesty to help women understand and embrace every phase of our hormonal and emotional cycles. She reminds us that emotions like worry, tension, and anxiety aren't signs that something's wrong. They are part of the human experience. That these emotions are signals guiding us back to presence, to trust, to the parts of ourselves that just want and deserve to be heard. What I love most about Sonya is that she helps us make meaning from what feels messy. She shows us that even our discomfort can be a doorway to deeper connection and self-awareness. So let's dive in. This conversation is a beautiful reminder that your body and emotions are always speaking to you. And when you slow down long enough to listen, you reconnect to who you really are. Hello, Sonya. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always so amazing talking to you.
Yes, I was saying in the intro, I really feel like every woman needs that friend where when we feel like, whatever it is in our lives that's going on is like ugly or messy or dark. I think voice notes and audio notes have become so popular because we're just all really busy. And obviously the in-person connection is ideal. But I was saying how you are my person that I go to in a lot of these scenarios. And you have such a wise, like when I think of you, wisdom is the word. You have such a wise way of making it all feel better and not just to make me feel better. This is what's, I'm so excited for these listeners to get to see this beauty in you is, you're pairing functional medicine and ancient wisdom. And you've got such a great background on the female body and our hormones and our emotions. So it's like you're a storyteller mixed with scientist, mixed with bestie that anyone would want to voice note.
Aw.
So I'm really excited for this conversation.
Aw, thank you. And I echo that back to you. Like, you're that person that I know will just get it and know that in that moment, I need just somebody there to listen and be able to be myself around without feeling judged. And I think that is so important for every woman to have. And I know we'll dive more deeply into like the emotional components of even community and how important that is. And I just think every woman needs this in her life. Like, it's life saving to have someone that will listen to you, that won't judge you, and that will keep you even accountable too. To have that element of a relationship also, I think is so important. So thank you for being that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to just dive right in. You just launched your book, Baby, into the world, and I know how beautiful that is, and I know how vulnerable that is. And I'm so excited because you have, like I said, so much wisdom and knowledge inside of you. And I would love to know what has been your goal and your dream and your wish in getting this book and your message essentially into the hands of more women.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few that kind of kept coming up over the years. Because as you know, with a book, there's quite a bit of time that you're spending and sitting with these words and trying to understand what's the best way to articulate what's going on in your own mind and your life. And because we all live our books. And what really I wanted to shine through in this book is that women are not alone. And so when we can hear others' stories, when we can understand ourselves maybe through the image of another, it can help create this opportunity for ourselves to get to know ourselves and to really become aware of maybe patterns that we might be carrying that are disrupting our relationships with ourselves and with others, especially those close to us. We can start to understand why our body is changing and how disruptive that can feel when we're still trying to do life and hold everything together. And so, through this book, my hope is that women start to master themselves and understand that they can access hormonal intelligence, emotional intelligence, and relationship intelligence, and that it's there for them to choose it. And it's okay to feel like you're falling apart. Like it's okay to feel like there's moments where you're feeling broken. Like all of it's okay. All of it's there on purpose to help us dive even more deeply into who we are.
I love that. I want to, one of the greatest things that you've ever shared with me is a concept you call, and I think it's from a famous quote as well, the power of the pause.
Hmm.
And I want you to share that with everybody because literally this is something that comes to my attention multiple times in every day of my life.
Yeah.
So, what is the power of pause? And the reason I just thought of it is as you're describing, mastering ourselves and how we're feeling,
Yeah.
perhaps. And, is this something that helps us become more present in our lives, more aware of how we're feeling, more connected to who we are in those moments that in the past we might have lost ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, it comes from Viktor Frankl, that quote from Man's Search for Meaning. And I don't remember the exact quote, but he was talking about that space in between the stimulus and the response and the freedom that we get when we're able to actually elaborate that space so that we can pause and respond rather than react. And that's like totally paraphrasing, but that's kind of the essence of that quote. So when we are in a moment of making a decision, a moment of reaction with our children, or even ourselves, when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, if we actually pause and take a deep breath or count or look for a color in our environment, whatever tool that we might use for ourselves, it can allow us to step out of reaction and step out of reacting out of emotion, but really like accessing that prefrontal cortex to assess what response I actually need that's going to serve me and serve the experience as well. And so if we take that into every decision that we're making daily, because, as women, we're making so many decisions in one day, it can help us in the little decisions and it can help us in those big decisions as well.
I think what one of the things that I love about it is, and I wonder if anyone else relates to this as they're listening. I think in so many moments of our life that feel hard or messy, whether it's with our kids or we've just lost control of the day, it's like we have this desire or this feeling that we're supposed to fix it. And for
Yeah.
me, the power of the pause, I've become empowered to know all I got to do is create awareness around it, almost like zoom out and become the observer. Like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really crazy. And step back and not even have to necessarily change anything about it, just become aware instead of just constantly reacting to the chain of
Yeah.
events that would typically transpire. So it becomes like this, holy cow, I won the day and I didn't even necessarily do anything. I just watched it through a different lens.
Yeah, and it creates curiosity then. I'm like, wow, like, well, that really triggered me. Like, I wonder what that's about. And then it takes you into that next step of healing of like, okay, where did that actually come from? Like, who does that actually belong to? Where did I learn that? Where did I witness that? And why is it still such a trigger in my body? And so the more curious we become, the more answers we get. And then afterwards, when we're in that same situation, we may not even have that same reaction because we've had that awareness and we've had that pause and that ability to become just more curious about where our reactions are coming from.
So I was reading part of the book this morning. This is such a good book. Everybody go grab this book. We will link it below. And you were walking through as an example, and I would love to do this here for the listeners, an emotion and the different way that we can look at this. You've talked about our emotions being messengers.
Yes.
And something that's so beautiful is when we're in the messy or the challenging, when we can assign some meaning to it, or like you said, get curious around it. So, can you kind of walk us through a scenario? So, say someone's feeling whether it's stressed or anxious or sad or upset, whatever it is, pick one. and
Yeah.
how you would encourage or maybe how you walk your patients through this process to create a deeper connection with self.
Yeah, so anxiety comes to mind because it's a big one that we all experience. And just to kind of give a little premise around anxiety and why women feel it so deeply is that our brains are actually wired to worry. And I don't think a lot of women are actually aware of this. So there's a part of our brain called the anterior cingulate gyrus that connects the emotional system to the prefrontal cortex. It's like the bridge. And it's actually larger in women on purpose so that we can have some level of anticipatory anxiety to see what challenge is about to come to help the future generations survive. So, like when you have a baby, you have to anticipate what their needs are going to be. And so that muscle is really strong in our brains. And what's been shown in several studies is that when there's changes in hormones, or if a woman is on birth control, and she's taking synthetic hormones, that bridge starts to shrink or expand and change. So the connectivity from your emotional center to your expression starts to change. And we become more reactive and more worried. We ruminate, we become more anxious. And so anxiety is often at the forefront of a woman's daily life. And if we look at what anxiety is, it's either lack of faith of oneself, because not trusting our decisions and what's to come. It's uncertainty. It's this desire to want to be certain and in control. So when we start to understand what it is, and the deeper meaning of anxiety is it's something to keep us safe. So it's there on purpose. So when we start to relate to these emotions and to kind of see them as an archetype almost. So there's a visualization in the book where I have you like go to a part of the world that, brings peace to you, like whether that's water or the beach or the forest, wherever you are. And you almost kind of see this like visual of this woman coming towards you, and she represents anxiety, and she may look different for everyone. And when you start to kind of see the anxiety outside of yourself, you can now ask it questions like, what are you trying to keep me safe from? Like, what is that deepest fear that I'm trying to avoid? And when we start to access these questions, all of a sudden these answers start to show up, and we start to understand the anxiety instead of suppressing it or shaming it or feeling bad that we're having these emotions. We're now understanding it and creating a completely different relationship. So that's the angle of the emotion. And then we can start to look at that bigger angle of the hormones, the physiology, like all of it. But it's really in that change in relationship. I don't know if you read that part where I bring up the first initial definition of sadness and how it actually comes from that word. I think it's sati, and it was fullness, is what it actually means. To feel sad is to feel full. And so it's like sati, satisfaction. And so when you think about sadness, for example, like grief that we might feel grief about our body when we're pregnant, but we're also feeling this like fullness of birthing something new into the world. We may feel grief when there's a loss in our life, but we're also feeling so full from the memories with that person. So I think if we start to relate to these emotions from their several polarities that they carry, we can then change our relationship and then our response or reaction to them.
So beautiful. Yeah, the section I was reading this morning was a complete walkthrough of anxiety, like you were
Oh,
just
okay.
doing. And then
Mm.
the conversation, the interactive exercises and reflection. So, so, so powerful. So, how do you help a woman unpack and really understand and connect to a feeling like anxiety so that she can work through it?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do is I have that like adapt formula. So awareness is key, right? So even being aware that that's what you're feeling, that you're feeling this level of anxiety or fear or uncertainty in your body, and where are you feeling it? Like, are you feeling it in your chest? Are you feeling it in your belly? When are you feeling it? Is there a pattern? Is there a pattern with your cycle where all of a sudden a week before you're feeling really anxious about things that, a week before that didn't feel so odd to you? Is it, you're maybe going through perimenopause or menopause, now all of a sudden every day is feeling like there is this level of anxiety? Is it when a certain person shows up in your sphere where you're feeling anxiety? So starting to kind of name it and understand when it's showing up can be really helpful in the initial stages. So, in order to really understand anxiety, you want to understand where it's coming from and the reaction that it's creating in your life. And so, what I first do, I feel the easiest thing is to work on the physical first. And that's where I call like the hierarchy of hormonal healing. So, physically, let's understand it. Okay, where are you feeling it? What are your hormones looking like right now? Is your progesterone really low? Is your estrogen really low? Is your testosterone low? Like, what's contributing to this physical feeling of anxiety that you're feeling right now? So let's tackle that. So when she starts to feel a bit more settled in her body and understand, "Oh, okay, yeah, a week before, that is when I'm feeling more anxious. So maybe I need more support with progesterone. Maybe I need more support with some tools leading up to that luteal phase so I can support myself." So that's like step one. And then step two is to uncover what's the pattern that you're experiencing when that anxiety shows up. What are the voices that you're hearing?
Mm.
Who's the narrator that's speaking to you in those moments? So we can understand the why behind the anxiety. And then we do that deeper emotional work to really get present, be in this moment. So we're not future projecting and we're not living in that future state, which is so hard for women to do because we're planners. And we were
Yeah.
just talking about before we got on the call about like drop off and making sure they have their stuff for volleyball and soccer and all the things. So we're constantly in the future. You
Mhm.
step into Costco at Halloween, all of a sudden, this Christmas is already there. And like so much of the noise around us takes us out of the present and into the future. So we have to work extra hard to keep us in this moment so that the anxiety doesn't take over, but instead informs what it is that we need to work on.
Yeah, and just going back to the first thing you said about the piece of our brain that this is there's a reason that we are this way. We're hardwired this way, which is so beautiful because we start to feel a little bit less like something's wrong with us. Something is actually right with us. We're extremely connected, but our environment or our hormones are, increasing the amount of discomfort that we're feeling. So I was going to ask you, and I think you kind of touched on it, but just in case there's some more here, how do we know if a feeling like anxiety or sadness or grief is an inside job or an outside job? Meaning,
Mm.
how do we know whether in this moment, what I need to do is I need to sit down and maybe journal and have this conversation? How do I know if in this moment I need to look to my hormones and maybe, we talk about cycle syncing for anyone who hasn't heard about it? Or how do I know in this moment that it's something in my environment? Maybe the tables I'm sitting at or the people that I'm being around. So maybe walking through the woman who has this visceral feeling, where do you start to know? How do you start to know where to point? Hey, quick pause. If you are someone who loves a checklist because it makes you feel like, all right, I actually did something today, this is for you. I created something called the Self With Checklist. It's basically your super simple reminder to get in your regulation reps, those 2 minutes, 3 times a day for you in those micro moments you actually have. This isn't another thing to add to your busy to-do list. The power is in how simple and subtle this is. You'll be shocked how much more connected and grounded you start to feel just by checking off these tiny boxes consistently. You can grab it through the first link below in the description or by scanning the QR code here.
So this is that self-awareness piece. And so what I get a lot of women to do is we have these like boxes. So there's relationship, there's like physical health, there's goals and dreams and all of that we're looking for. There's like career, finances, personal growth. So when we start to look at these different areas of life and what it is that we want for ourselves and what we might be feeling like we're lacking or where we're not meeting expectation, we start to kind of create some clarity around the moments where we're feeling extra anxious. And is it when we're thinking about our finances? Is it when we're thinking that maybe we're lacking purpose right now? Is it, like I said before, like the week before your period, all of a sudden everything was fine, but the sounds of your partner chewing or your children's voices, like those little things, all of a sudden you just can't stand anymore, and that anxiety is really rising inside of you. So when we have that discernment of understanding like where it's showing up, then for me, I always test every woman. I test her hormones to look at the physicality of it. And I'm going to say over like 98% of the time, there's often some sort of mismatch in her hormones that are contributing to that higher level of anxiety. Because I do think anxiety exists in all of us. We all have it because it's there for a reason. It's when it's starting to take over your reactions in your life, that is where the challenge sits. So if we can identify physically what's going on, is it the hormones? Is it your digestive system? Because we know our feel good neurotransmitters are made in our digestion. So, if we're not nourishing our bodies, are we feeling anxious because of that? So, by looking at that physicality, we understand that we start to support nourishment. We start to bring in exercises to help her feel grounded in her body every day. And then that discernment becomes easier and easier. We can see that, okay, it's a week before. He's still the same guy. I still love him, even though his presence is really agitating in this moment. We then learn that it's temporary. This feeling is temporary, that I will move through it.
I interviewed Molly Eastman, who I think you know, she's a sleep expert, and she has this hard and fast rule that any thoughts, in the middle of the night, we've just got to know to table them. They're not rational. We don't lean into them. They just kind of are what they are. And it's one of those things that's like perfectly good to box and push over here. Whereas I think in a lot of the conversations we have, like we don't want to suppress any emotions. And so I'm thinking of her as I'm hearing you talk about, different phases of the cycle and different emotions we might feel. So do you have, because I consider you a cycle syncing expert, do you have hard and fast rules on things that you just don't allow into your sphere during phases of your cycle?
Yeah, for sure. Those last 2 weeks of the luteal phase, no life decisions. That is like a hard rule for me. And that is one that I can really stick by. Like you can make others, or I'm not going to have a meeting, or I'm not going to do this. Those I feel like in life don't really work for me. But that rule of like not making big decisions is like, that's the one I stick with in that luteal phase.
And which days of the cycle is that? And for women who are no longer having a cycle, which phase of the moon?
Yes. Yes. So that would be after post ovulation, which can range from day 10 all the way up to day 16. So you'd have to know your cycle to understand when luteal phase starts. And so that's for women that are cycling. Women that are on birth control is a totally different conversation because she's getting a hit of hormones every single day. So she's not having those ebbs and flows of her hormonal cycle. So for her, it's important to understand what type of hormone she's taking, how it's influencing her brain, and if that is what's causing her anxiety as well. And then for a woman that's postmenopausal, you can kind of sync up with the moon. So when you start to see that the full moon is often when women are ovulating. So from full moon to new moon, you can kind of see if your moods are changing, if your reaction time is changing to your partners or just to life, workspace. That's where I would really tune into, like, is there a change that's happening in my body and mind?
I think this is such an important conversation because what you've taught me, like what I now know about cycle syncing based on where I am in my cycle, it's almost like it's a permission slip. And we're also going to talk about like comparing and contrasting with, what other people are out there doing, but it's also helped me realize, there's times in every woman's life where we're going to be high energy and putting ourselves out there and super social and doing all the things. And that's a lot of times what we see on social media. And so we assume that's how everyone feels all the time. And then there's phases of our life and our cycle where we're going to be more inward and internal. And usually that's not what you're going to see out there. And so cycle syncing has given me a reminder and permission slip like, oh, no wonder I feel this way. I'm supposed to lean in. And so when you're saying, let's just start with luteal phase, when you're saying don't make life decisions during the last half of your cycle, why is that? What's going on at that time?
Yeah, so there's such a fluctuation in our hormones at that time. So once you ovulate, your progesterone is starting to rise and estrogen should rise a little bit again. But because of life today, because of the stressors that we carry, whether that's a physical, chemical stress from the environment, from the pesticides that we're eating and the lack of nourishment, or just our daily stressors of keeping up with the world and our busy schedules, we are often going into that stage already depleted. So progesterone doesn't get to shine. Estrogen often isn't doing what it needs to as well. So because of that lack of hormone, our capacity or ability to deal with what's coming at us is a little bit lower. And just naturally, even when progesterone is high, it's such a nurturing hormone. It wants you to go inwards because it's nesting. It's nesting for this egg that apparently will come in and embed itself into your uterine lining. And when it doesn't, there is this grief that the body feels, and that's when it lets go of your lining. And that's when the estrogen and progesterone fall. And that's what triggers that bleed. And so it's important for that time for us to go a bit more inwards and to slow down. So we're going to move different. We're going to eat different. We're going to be thinking differently because at that point, we're not thinking about getting ahead. We're thinking about how are we going to nest and nurture. And so if we sink into that feeling, how are we doing that for ourselves? Are we nurturing ourselves or are we pushing through? That is going to dictate how we feel because then there's this internal battle that we're fighting when we're trying to push through, but yet our body is asking us to slow down. We are now struggling with ourselves. And that struggle is what creates that irritation and that agitation. And then if you look at it from a physical lens, if you have really low progesterone, you're not increasing GABA's capacity in your brain to help you feel calm. If your estrogen is also too low in that cycle as well, estrogen suppresses fear. And so if we don't have enough of those hormones, we are going to feel more fearful. We are going to feel more anxious, more irritable. So it's so important to kind of understand yourself and your responses at that time compared to your responses like post bleed when all of a sudden you're like, I can take on the world. I can do anything. And that's because that's when estrogen is shining.
Which is, I think, how most of us are trying to live our lives the whole month and
Yes.
then judging ourselves when we don't feel that way the whole month.
Yeah. And that's the disconnect, right? Because we are living in a world that's not designed for women. And if it was designed for women, we'd have more compassion for each other and for ourselves. But we are trying to keep up in a world where it wasn't designed for us. It doesn't wasn't designed for our cycles, and that's why we're burning out.
Okay, so how does today's woman live in accordance with our cycle? How do we go inward when we've got jobs and kids and sports schedules and meal planning? How do we actually do that?
Yeah, those are those subtle moments, right? So I call it like the 5M kind of cycles. So the first one is looking at like meals. How can I support myself through nourishment? Like what is going to nourish my body in these different phases? So the second one is movement. Like how can I move my body to feel grounded? Because if we train our bodies, we can train our mind. And we often are trying to figure everything out up here and trying to solve all our problems. But if we actually slow down and get grounded in our bodies, we then train the mind to do the same. And then the other one is morning and evening rituals. So having something that's of your own. And for me, it's my tea, right? So I've kind of trained my brain. As soon as I pick up that cup of tea, I'm taking a deep breath. I'm slowing down. So now it's just so habitual that I'm not even thinking about it. And then in the evening, I'm, shutting everything off at a certain time. I'm taking a few deep breaths. It could be something so simple, but it creates this new pattern and this new habit. And then we also have one to call like the mojo, right? So like how do we connect? Whether that's connecting to yourself or it's connecting to your partner. And so or a friend or whoever it might be, but bringing some level of connection into your space is so important.
So, what I'm hearing in that is it can be in the micro moments. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be a big experience of, okay, I need to shut the world off because I'm in
Yeah.
luteal phase. It's no, I can really lean in and be intentional in the small
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah, you could be at your kid's soccer game and like close your eyes for a moment and maybe the sun is out and you're just like bathing in that sunshine while you're watching and it's just taking those micro moments and remembering yourself in those.
I love that. One of the ways I've translated it when I'm feeling that way, if I'm in luteal phase and I have a big day and a lot of people in front of me, I'll simply pivot into my intention being, I'm just going to be very present with everyone in front of me and I'm going to be a really good listener today. And that helps me because I'm someone who's very outward. You know me very well. I'm used to being really social. And so when I don't have that energy, sometimes people are like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" I'm like, "No, I'm here for you today."
But that's what takes us to that identity conversation too, because I think we put on these personalities and gather these identities as we're growing up. from what we've been told, what we've witnessed, what we've had to create to survive. And so when we're moving through life with these personalities and identities, and all of a sudden our body and our mind is asking us to shift something, it can feel really scary. It can feel scary to slow down to the woman that's like a high achiever. And so that is going to create anxiety. That's going to create more stress in her body. So there has to be different ways. And that's why I created those like three identities too. And like really focusing on the high achiever isn't going to sit in Savasana for 30 minutes. You know, she's going to need stuff in her micro moments to build into her day to feel grounded and still feel like she's being productive. So finding out who you are and your identity that you've been maybe accessing or playing is a big part of understanding what micro moments you actually need, because that may look different for all of us.
100%. Let's talk through the three identities. That's all in the book.
It is, yes. So the first one is the overachiever. The second one is the people pleaser. And then the third one is the perfectionist. And I feel like we have each of those within us, but there's a quiz in there where you can kind of see, okay, where am I dominant right now? Because every season of our life may play out a different identity. And then once you understand her, once you understand the why behind the overachieving, like, is it because we didn't feel enough growing up? The people pleasing, is it because we didn't feel like we belonged? The perfectionist, was it because we only got praised because of perfection? And so when we start to understand why we're making the choices we are, we then understand the identity that we've been carrying, maybe that we can let go of and start to make those choices just for ourselves and start to like weave in habits that are going to create more nourishment rather than depletion.
Mm, so important. Sonia, that's the her method? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked a bit about how we can use our bodies to help regulate our mind. And I think this is a really, really important one because anybody who's gotten a little spun out, lost ourselves in the moments, it sounds like activating the body can be a portal back to self. So can you kind of walk us through why that is and what that could look like?
Yeah, so in yoga, what we're taught is, yoga means union. So it's bringing like access or connection between your body, mind, and spirit. And so when we're disconnected, all those components of ourselves are disconnected. And as soon as we start to train the body in movement, we are shutting down the wiring that your brain is used to accessing and used to being busy in, because now the attention is going to your muscles, it's going to the movement, it's going to the breath. And then as we do that, that starts to retrain in how the brain is responding to our external environment and even internal. We become more deeply grounded. We become more aware of where we're feeling things in our body. And then through that breath, through that movement, and that can look different for everyone. Like I was saying, for the overachiever, we want to slow her down, but she may need some hit workouts at first to feel like she's being productive. And so we may want to start with that and then say, hey, why don't we try some restorative yoga and see what that feels like? Because that's actually what she needs.
I get that. I'm laughing because you know me, I'm that one. And it's the tea. The tea is so good for me. I want the coffee. I want the fast, give me the hit, right? And these switches, I have you in my mind all the time. And it's bridging the gap and doing a little bit of both. So I love that you're walking this through in the her method.
Yeah, and then for, like, the people pleaser that maybe isn't, in her element, isn't fast enough, like, she may need some encouragement to find strength in her. So she is the one that I'm gonna say, "We need to hit up some weights now." So you've been doing yoga, maybe you've been doing all these things, but we need to access strength so you feel strong in your body, and then you feel vital, and you feel like you can have that courage to speak your truth. And then for the perfectionist, it may be something complete for her, I wanna completely slow her down so that she becomes aware. So for her, it is going to be yoga. So the reason why I think that works so well is that it gives you an actionable step, and we're not stuck in our mind thinking about it. It's just, "This is what I'm doing." And so for me, for years, I'm gonna say I would say since I was 14, because that is when I really started to shift my relationship with my body because I had anorexia, and it was like this switch that turned on all of a sudden that these choices that I'm making are only affecting me, nobody else, and I'm in control of the outcome of my body and my life. And it was working out in the mornings that actually gave me that sense of peace and courage to make different decisions for myself. So for me, daily movement in the morning has been like my savior in so many moments of my life. And I know everyone else will find their own way, but I think that's why I'm such an advocate for movement, because it really takes you out of your mind and your story and all of that and brings you back here in this moment.
100%. I mean, that the feeling that we have after a workout, there's science behind it. It's one of the best way. I'm just picturing that feeling right now. I think it's why I love moving my body so much. It stops the busy chatter, right? It gets us in the here and now. Can you talk about going back to dancing? Speaking of
Yeah.
movement, look at your face. You're so cute.
Yeah, dancing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I grew up being a dancer, teaching and dancing and performing. And there was this one particular type of dance that I really wanted to learn. And it was almost forbidden in the household. It's called Kathak. It's like an Indian classical dance. And the dance that I was teaching and doing, and I've realized this over a period of time of now training this past year, is it was so masculine. And that's why it was so accepted. And so the other type of dance, it's called Bhangra. It's like a Punjabi dance and it's high energy. Like I love it. I still love it. Still like teaching it and super high energy, but so, so masculine. So you feel really good doing it. And I realized over time that I was sitting so much in that masculine body and sitting so much in that like yang energy. And when we're sitting in that yang energy, we're losing sight of that feminine side of ourselves that's like soft, that is more compassionate to herself, that can move through life in this compassionate way with herself. So then she can live that way with others too. I feel like I was creating so much rigidity being in that masculine yang state. And so this past year,
I'm just curious, what made it masculine?
it's the movement, and it is, yeah, it is a male dance. So, like, traditionally, it's the men that do this dance, and I just loved being better than the men around me, being able to jump high, being able to do all the moves and, like, put that, like, energy into it, which is, again, amazing. And at
Mhm.
the same time, I realized I was just putting so much emphasis on that because I was being rewarded for it too.
Mm.
And it was this other form of dance called Kathak, which is like the classical dance. It's very feminine that I was struggling with. And so in my training in this last year, like the first couple of months, it's the teacher yelling at me, be more feminine. And because all my movements were so masculine still. And through that, I started to heal parts of myself. Through that, I started to become more aware of my emotions. There's moments where I would walk out of the class and just like weep, and knowing that I was really starting to bring up old stories and starting to release them. So the weeping wasn't like sad, it was actually like joy. And so bringing something like that back into your life that you did as a child that gave you joy is so important. And I know you're an expert at expressing that, is like we all need that in our lives. I do feel like that's the deepest medicine we could have.
I agree. And why do you think that is from your
Mhm.
perspective as a
Yeah.
storyteller and,
Yeah.
pairing the wisdom with the physiology of the body?
Yeah, so as we're growing up, we're like taking on others' beliefs and beliefs about ourselves. And then we're rewiring our nervous system. We're rewiring our hormonal system. So are we going to produce more testosterone? Are we going to produce more estrogen? Are we going to produce more cortisol? Is all based off of this identity that we're creating as we're growing up based on our environment and who we've been told how to be. But when you look at or you think about yourself as that like 5-year-old that didn't have that awareness and what gave her joy and how present she could be in that joy and how we've lost that because of the noise, we're now accessing more cortisol, we're accessing more of that stress hormone, and then we're feeding into these identities because of the meaning that we've given that experience. And so when we're able to tap back in to that little girl version of ourselves, we're accessing joy again that we didn't know existed anymore because of the narration that we're accessing. And so when we start to like unwind the identities again, unwind the beliefs, unwind the stories, we actually get back to her. And she's who we actually want to express. And especially in these later years, I feel like in these like wise woman years when we're stepping towards perimenopause and menopause, that really is a time where we get to do this. Because in those middle years, everything's about everybody else, the
Mhm.
kids, the career, the whatever it might be. So sometimes there isn't time. Sometimes we have to tuck her away to keep her safe.
Mhm.
But in this time where our hormones, like the armor that our hormones gave us for so many years, is starting to dissolve, now there's nowhere to hide. Now all the old stories are bubbling up, and now here's the opportunity to access her again. I don't know if I actually answered your question, but I just feel really strongly that this is an opportunity when we're not feeling like ourselves, when we're feeling like everything's falling apart. I think it's just us breaking open and breaking back into who we were always meant to be without the conditioning that we've been given.
I'm so grateful that that's the narrative that's rising for perimenopause. You
Yeah.
know, it's giving a landing pad for the feelings and experiences that all of us women are walking through.
Mhm.
And again, I think when we've got purpose and a story behind the why, it can turn into something maybe beautiful and maybe just a little bit more tolerable. But so how do you I mean, is it essentially just, look back at what you did when you were little and start incorporating more of that into your life? I mean, I know my version of this, my gymnastics,
Mhm.
how much I can't even
Mhm.
talk about it without lighting up. The tumbling.
Yeah.
But as you walk patients or clients through this, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get them back to her? I love all the
Yeah.
her method. That part of the book is just a must read. So
Yeah, and I think it happens in stages depending on what story you're carrying, how heavy your backpack is. And so a big part of the book also is just talking about like generational trauma and the stories we carry and the stresses we carry and how that stress would define how we're living our lives and how that actually impacts our physical health. So then I always go back to, okay, how do we simplify this relationship? Is first going to the body because that's what brings them in. They either have fibroids that they're dealing with, or they're miscarrying all the time, or they have such heavy bleeds that they can't even leave their homes. So it's understanding, okay, what's the message your body's telling us? Where are we feeling disconnected? So first by working on that physical piece, like looking at her hormonal story and her blueprint and helping her access tools to help support that, then we can step into, okay, what roles have we been playing that are not our own, and what can we let go of, and what do we need to reignite? So then we can step into that other layer when we're actually feeling better in our bodies. There's actually energy now to dive into those layers. Okay, what's that generational story that I'm carrying that I get to break now? And I get to also access maybe the wisdom that's been passed down to me, along with some of the traumas that were passed down to me that I'm going to learn from. And so when we start to do that, we start to unwind ourselves, we start to uncover our truest nature, our true personalities from all the different ones that we've been putting on. And then we get to see, okay, what is that thing that gave me joy? Like, what can I do in my everyday to express that again? It could be something so simple. It could be like twirling around, because kids will just do that and feel amazing. So for me, it's like, yeah, just putting on music and dancing by myself. And it helps me to access that. So for everyone, it's going to be different.
and how effective do you feel that all of what you just talked about is in balancing hormones, lowering cortisol,
Yeah, it's
increasing
everything.
dopamine, serotonin?
Yeah. Yeah, it's everything because our that story impacted our biology. It changed our biology. And when it does that, we have this new operating system that we're operating from. So we don't even know what life could be like if that wasn't the case, because this is the new normal. So the new normal might be high cortisol or complete burnout. The new normal might be heavy periods because of the fibroids. So when we start to unravel what's actually hidden behind all of that, we can then start to heal it. And your hormones inform your emotions. And it's like a cycle, right? So when your hormones are off, like your progesterone is low, if your estrogen is low, your motivation is low. you're not getting GABA, you're not getting serotonin, you're not getting these like chemicals in your brain that help you feel at ease. So if we can fix the hormones, we can now give more support to your emotional intelligence so that you can respond better, so you can relate better. And so when we understand that cycle between your hormones, emotions, and relationships, we can start to make those micro changes in our habits to help fuel that relationship instead of depleting it.
Mm, so good. All right, there's a section in your book I actually typed out. I want to read this because I read this morning. It was so beautiful. And I want you to expand on this. You talk about using your heart as a guide. And I feel like this goes along with what we were just talking about, connecting back to joy. When you pause and connect with your heart, you open a doorway to deeper listening, not just to others, but to yourself. What do you mean by that?
So I don't know if you read this part in there, but I shared a Sufi teaching about the heart and relationship. And if you, the story kind of goes when there's like lovers that are fighting and they're yelling at each other with anger, it's because their hearts are so far apart. Their physical distance might be really close because they're yelling, but their hearts are really far apart. And so when our hearts are close together, all we have to do is whisper and we can understand the other. We can just be in the same room and understand what the other is going through. When we start to access the world through our heart rather than our mind, we open connection. We open this like pathway to understanding and we start to make different decisions. So in the last little while, we've had a few losses in the family, colleagues. There's this really deep awareness around mortality and just how that's the one thing we humans have in common is that our time here is so precious and our time is limited. And so when you start to see this like bigger picture of life and you start to access the heart and understanding that bigger picture, you make different decisions. You start to say yes to things that will give you joy. You start to say no to things that are taking your energy away. You start to see what's actually important for you. And so the more heart-based we are, the deeper we can feel, the deeper we can connect to ourselves, and then the more deeply we understand the other. We can see through the eyes of empathy. We can feel more compassion. We can just understand the other's decisions and actions more deeply.
So, in a world where we are so run in our head, how do we get back into our hearts?
Yes. So that's those daily practices. That really is the movement that is feeding your body what it needs. That's sleeping. That's those moments. And that's connecting to something bigger than yourself and to be of service. I would say that's like the last layer. Like, how can you make yourself more other focused? And not in a way where, as moms, we're very other focused with our kids and we're constantly in seva, which is like selfless act. But it's like, how do we make ourselves other focused in a way where we're so full that we can now give? And so I find when we're up here, if we make it about somebody else and serving somebody else, it takes us out of our own way.
So beautiful. All right, you talked a little bit ago about ADAPT as a system. You were going through an acronym ADAPT. Did we hit them all? I think you only hit the A.
Yeah. So the A is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
D is discernment. So that's
And
what we were.
sorry, we were using this for what though? Like when you get.
So this is like when you're in the healing process
Okay, so
and
when.
you're trying to like understand, okay, what are the steps I need to do in order to break a cycle, in order to break a pattern and not be in that cycle that's like creating chaos in your life. And so the first one is awareness, being aware of what the feeling is, what the symptom is. The D is discernment. So if it's an emotion that we're looking at, discerning where is that emotion actually coming from. If it's a symptom we're looking at, discernment is testing, like understanding like why I'm experiencing that. And then I have to do it in my head.
A.
A awareness, D discernment, and then A again is action. So this is the habits, right? So understanding our habits and choices that we're making every single day. And then through discernment, we can make changes to those actions. And it's through that action that we're now pattern disrupting. So that's the P. So now we're disrupting that original pattern of reaction that we might be having. And then the last one is that transformation and really anchoring and acknowledging the transformation. Just like when we see our child do something amazing, we're acknowledging that. I don't think we're spending enough time acknowledging the growth that we may have with ourselves and the choices that we're making and the changes that we've made. I think we get to a certain level and all of a sudden that's not enough. We got to get to another one. We're not pausing and acknowledging the work that we've done to get here. And that work might look like I ate breakfast that was really nourishing today. Like that's amazing. I was steady with how I ate. I moved my body today. Like just recognizing all that you are doing.
I love that. And I could even picture, I love a morning ritual like you've talked about. You have yours. I call it the morning sit spot. That's such a great acronym to write out in our morning sit spot and just maybe pick something that we experienced the day before and go through it. I think this is a great way to create that connection with ourselves again. Is that conversation looking back and like you said, acknowledging and celebrating not just the big wins, but the micro ones that stack up over time, right? Hey, real quick, I love tools that help us feel more grounded and connected, right? That's why I am obsessed with a higher dose PEMF mat. It's my go-to for the moments when life feels overwhelming and I just need a reset. This mat uses PEMF technology to help calm your nervous system, reduce stress, and recharge your energy all in just a few minutes. So whether I'm taking a break from life, looking to unwind after a hectic day, recover from workouts, or just simply catch my breath, it's like giving my body that ultimate recharge. So seriously, if you're looking for an easy way to feel balanced and relaxed, you've got to check it out. For all my favorite higher dose products and an epic discount code just for you, check out my links in the description. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have that because we sometimes feel like we need that from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we didn't get that from our childhood. We didn't get validated. Didn't get acknowledged. But if we start to recognize like we are our biggest cheerleader and need to be our biggest cheerleader, then we're not wanting it from the outside world. And that could be everything from where we are on social media to a book coming out or to whatever it might be, that we don't need that validation from the outer world to feel enough.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it also demystifies, I think a lot of us women are hearing, we've lost our voice or we've lost our connection with ourselves. We've kind of gotten so involved in, like you said earlier, the career, the family, and maybe not lost ourselves, but like lost touch with a lot of parts of ourselves. And I think that can sound kind of big and overwhelming. Like, okay, where do I start? What do I do? Is this a retreat in Bali I need to go to?
Yeah.
Like, no, it can happen in these small practices of just, like you said, asking questions of your emotions. What is this that I'm feeling? Reconnecting to our hearts. So I love all this that you've shared. I love the HER method. I love identifying these different types and personifying them and figuring out the variety of parts of ourselves. Any other systems like that for helping to ground ourselves and connect, maybe in the morning or in the evening rituals that you love? We also wouldn't want to give away the whole book because all
Yeah.
this is in the book.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece for me is like the first part of the book is really talking about the understanding. So, like understanding yourself and taking that time, like you said, maybe sitting with the ADAPT formula, sitting with yourself and like reflecting, like stepping into reflection. There's this like triangle of hormonal empowerment that I talk about in there. And there's like three elements to that. So the first one is that self-awareness. And then the other one is self-initiation, like being able to initiate yourself into this like new process. And then the other one is just like that discernment piece that comes back with self. And all of that starts to build trust. So the biggest thing that I think we are lacking when we're feeling disconnected is trusting ourselves, trusting our decisions, our choices, our intuition. And so when we sit with ourselves, when we make these little choices that actually are quite big, because how we eat is going to determine our digestive system. That is going to determine our hormonal system. That is going to determine our emotions. So when we start to see that ripple effect of these like micro choices that we're making every day, we start to see that they are actually really big and they're going to create macro changes in our lives. And so how do we rebuild that trust is those little choices that we're making every day.
I'm so glad you said that because I think that's so powerful. It's like we can look at someone who's had a dramatic life change, right? Whether it's like gained 30 pounds, lost 30 pounds, total pivot in career, or whatever it is. And I think we look at this and forget that it is a result of the stack of the micro. And I think this concept is so important because it can really empower you in how dramatically we can change our lives through these micro changes. And again, I think we overcomplicate things that can be so simple and underestimate how easy it can be to dramatically change the way that we feel and show up in our lives.
Yeah, that's it. It is those like simple decisions that we make, and that takes the overwhelm out of it. And that also takes the excuses out of it too. Right. So, like you were saying, like, do we need that trip to Bali or do we need to go here? And then all of a sudden, there's all these blocks to us feeling whole again. But no, we can be in our everyday lives and make these subtle choices that are going to create ripple effects in our life.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
also stops us from pushing until we can fill in the blank. I'm
Mm-hmm.
burnt but I'm just going to push through till Friday. I got
Mm-hmm.
nothing left, but it's noon and I gotta push through till 6 p.m. Well, like, what can we do in these moments? Like Sonia said, just as simple as a conversation with yourself. Okay, why, maybe in that moment, what would you encourage someone to ask? It's 12 o'clock on a Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in a phase of my cycle where I'm not feeling matched up with what I have on my plate for today. And this woman
Mm.
has no time, right? We all say we have no time. How can she take advantage of the micro moment?
Yeah. So that's just putting your 2 feet on the ground, left hand on your chest, right hand on your belly, taking a deep belly breath. That in itself is nourishment. And then asking yourself, what do I need right now? Such a simple question, but you'd be surprised at the answer you get.
Yes, you would. And the more we do it, the louder it gets, the
Yeah.
louder and more clear it gets. I
Yeah,
remember when I first
absolutely.
started this practice, and I think you're the one who got me started on that.
Mhm.
It kind of took a minute, and I'd be like, is that really what I want? Like, that's kind of crazy. And that doesn't make sense. What? I want to hear
Y
Shakira on the
yeah.
radio. Like, I want this random song I haven't heard in 10 years.
Yeah.
And now it's like, boom. I
Yeah.
wanna hear Shakira Hips Don't Lie. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Crank it and get back to my life.
Yeah.
It takes the whisper and it becomes like a megaphone of your inner
Yeah.
voice of what you need.
Yeah, because 'cause you're quieting the external noise now and really raising up and allowing your intuition to come up and speak and your soul to speak so it doesn't have to whisper so much anymore.
And I keep saying self-care needs a rebrand, it's connection, and that
Yes.
is it. That
Yes.
isn't waiting for the 1-hour massage on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's getting the self-care at
Yeah.
12:30 on a Wednesday
Yeah.
in between all that you have on your plate.
Yeah.
That's
And
self-care.
I also think we're wired to think that things are supposed to be hard, and
Yeah.
when they're easy, it feels confusing. It's like, why is it like, I had that moment a couple of weeks ago where, like, the day felt really easy, you know, drop-offs, pickups, going to the sports, making dinner, it just felt so easy, and I felt like I was doing something wrong. And I remember even during the book process, there was a moment, I think I even boxed you about it, and I was like, am I not supposed to feel more stressed about this? Because we've been taught in order to look productive, in order to look successful, in order to feel successful, maybe that comes from like being on the go all the time, by pushing through, by not sleeping. So that becomes the norm. But what if it was the opposite? What if we could relax into life? What if we could still be successful and productive, but just from that softer yin energy and not that yang masculine energy that we've been taught to live in, which again is still important. It's still a part of us. We need to step into action, but we tend to live there. And it's these micro moments that start to change then our biology. It starts to change what we're teaching the next generation. It starts to change how our hormones are communicating and the messages that they're receiving. And so then that's going to change the size of that fibroid or that cyst or that irregular cycle or those discomforts that you're feeling in your body. It is from these micro moments.
And so for the woman who maybe wouldn't be aware of doing what you just said, because I think a lot of us do this. I think we're hardwired for struggle and challenge, and that means success. So for the woman who maybe wouldn't be aware, wow, this feels easy and that feels wrong, how might she move forward in a way that could be detrimental to her physical and mental health in that case? Like, what do we create in our lives in those moments without realizing it?
So when we're in that state of overdrive, when we're constantly in that state of cortisol, we're changing the messages that our ovaries are receiving, our brain is receiving, our hormones are giving out to the other cells. We're creating an environment of survival. And so when you're stuck in survival, we're increasing inflammation, we're down regulating your immune system, we're telling your body that it's not safe. So we're constantly stuck in that not safe space. And when we're doing that, we're down regulating these other hormones that help us feel at ease, help us feel at peace, that help our memory, that help energy, that help, us feel good in our bodies. So we're down regulating all of that and up-regulating the hormones that are helping us just move through the day and push through. And over time, that's going to take a toll. I'll specifically talk about the reproductive system. So this is where you start to see the fibroids, the endometriosis, the unexplained infertility, like all the things that, many women are struggling with today. And I'm not saying just stress or just the trauma or just the story is the cause of that. It's a multiple layered experience that the body is experiencing, but this is what triggers that when we're stuck in a certain state.
Mm.
And in order to break the cycle, we have to be aware first that we're actually stuck in it. And
Mhm.
often for a woman that's in that stage, she's not going to stop until her body tells her, until her body starts to really scream at her. So that might be an autoimmune thing. That might be she can't leave the house because she's bleeding so much because of the fibroids or whatever might be going on. So she is often like stopped in her tracks. Then she's seeking the answers that she needs, which is
Mm.
unfortunate because we could do things to prevent that. But if that's our pattern, and if that's what we needed to do to survive, we may not get there until our body tells us.
Right. So for the in between, if a woman listening is used to that, right? That go, go, go. And like you were just kind of talking about when, if that's been our pattern and that's what feels safe because that's what's familiar and our nervous system craves safe, right? And maybe she experiences something that's easy. Like you were just saying, during your book writing process, like this is easy and it almost feels wrong and it's just unfamiliar. Are there certain words that we can anchor into on a day like that to help make it right and make it okay so that we don't go out and create busyness and chaos and stress?
Yeah, what comes to mind right away is just saying, I am enough.
Mm.
So just by accessing that phrase is we're telling ourselves that this is enough. I am enough. That this is how it's meant to be. This is perfect. Like there's nothing that needs to change. So just allowing ourselves to have that affirmation in those moments. And that's actually what is helped me in those moments. Cause I still see myself. So the other day, I just wanted to sit and watch a movie, like a Bollywood movie. And I literally had to say to my husband, do not judge me. I'm going to sit here for 3 hours and watch this movie because this is what my soul needs right now. But I caught myself, I'm like, why did I need to explain that to him? Because I still fear that judgment of being like lazy in quotations or not doing enough or not being enough. And I had to continuously say to myself, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough. And it's not something that still comes easy to me. So it's a practice that I have to keep anchoring into. So I do think these phrases or these pause moments can be really helpful for us to move through that experience right then and there.
For sure. I mean, you think about how many of us, I'm definitely one who's experienced this. I still do. Tie our productivity to our worth for whatever reason. And it's interesting because I want to say it's like the story that society told us, but at some point we let that in because I think there's a lot of stories that we've let the world tell us or society tell us that maybe no one even directly said out loud to us. It's just what we for some reason brought on and took on in the closed captions. Like we thought you meant this, and I owned that as my identity. And so
Mm.
it's so interesting when we just start to create this awareness, like you said, like catching yourself saying that to your husband. Wow, isn't that interesting? Look at me needing to explain myself for taking a rest that I very much deserve. Wow, look at
Yeah.
that. Right? And
Yeah.
that's it. That's the magic is just noticing it.
Yes. Yeah. And the power in what you're saying too, it's like we created that identity, we can like release it too. We have the power to release it and unwind it. And so when we realize that, it's like, okay, I am in the driver's seat. Like life's not happening to me. I can actually take action. I can make the choices to shift everything. I can shift my physical body through these choices. I can heal my hormones. I can be less reactive. I can do all of that. with these choices.
How important is community in this? And then what does the woman do that's listening that she's like, great, I hear that all the time and I don't have one. What do I do?
Yeah, it's huge. There was actually a study that was done around like anger and what it does in the body. And what they showed was that anger specifically, like they tested a lot of different emotions, increases interleukin 6, which is a very pro inflammatory cytokine in the body. So it creates more inflammation. And then the remedy that they were testing was social support. So they saw the women that received all of a sudden started to receive some social support, even if they were experiencing anger, their inflammation was going down. Their inflammatory markers like interleukin 6 would go down. So their body wasn't reacting to the emotions like it was before because she had support. So again, it tells us how wired we are for community. I mean, our hormone oxytocin is all based on community and support and bonding and connection. And for those of us that don't have the time or don't have that community, I do think so. What I will tell some of my patients is that, okay, we kind of access what is it that you want to do? Is it dance? What movement do you like? So maybe you don't have that person that you can call right away, but maybe you're going to a class every week and you're seeing the same people. You're in that energy of community. You're starting to build the courage to have that conversation with that person. Maybe we start there. Maybe we start first with ourselves. Maybe we start with like picking up the phone at least once a day and connecting with someone that we love, whether that's a voice note or a call. Don't text. I think the voice is so, so important. That in itself can create so much connection because loneliness is an epidemic, I think, right now. And we're experiencing so much of that that I do think the remedy and the medicine is going to be community and connection. Like that's what matters. It's relationships is what really dictates the quality of our life.
I love that. Yeah, and think about, if you start to go back to some sort of class, like you went back to dance, right? And I went back to gymnastics. And when you go back to a class of something that lights you up and fills you with so much joy, creating those connections in the community become so easy because you are vibrant and magnetic, right? And so for the woman who maybe feels a little compressed and inward listening to this, I think if you can find that, whatever it was that brought you joy when you were little, um, it gets you out of yourself, right? It creates this light, playful version again that anyone wants to, everybody wants to be with.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, you can start small too. Like there's been studies around individuals that run errands are actually happier than those that don't. So that like, walk to the grocery store or going to the bank or doing whatever because you're having that human interaction with others. And then you start to like build community in that way as well. We go to our community center gym here every morning, my husband and I, and we're seeing the same individuals every day. And I'd say our area here mostly are individuals that are retired. So they're all like 60 and above. And we love being around them because they're still so vital and they're putting effort into their bodies and their energy and everything. And it lights me up every morning to see people working on themselves every single day. And that in itself can create that abundance of energy that you then exude and start to attract people that will be in your community.
I love that. Well, so many amazing aspects of your book. Like I said, I'm going to link it below. I recommend every woman go out and grab this, get it for a friend, get it for your mom, your sister, put this in your morning anchor or evening anchor sit spot. I want to ask you a little bit about the author process as we wrap up. But before I do that, I just want to ask if there's anything that we've missed in the systems that you want to share with the listeners.
I think we've covered mostly all of it. I do hope women get what they need out of this book. And I think the biggest piece is that you are not alone. And I hope that through reading this, that you start to really access that self-mastery. Like that's like the biggest thing for me. And concepts and things like that. I share a lot of stories of like patients and what they went through and how they were able to heal from different scenarios. And I think it's so important to hear those stories, but also being able to see yourself in that. So if you give yourself time to just reflect, on what you need and how you can access it.
I love the way that you've laid it out. It's stories and then it's patient stories and then interactive walkthroughs and journaling prompts to create that self-connection and mastery. So I love your intro that you wrote. And I think something that I want to highlight here is, when we see anyone out there who maybe we call an expert at something or someone who's like a star athlete and, we're looking at getting better at soccer, whatever this is. I talk to our kids about this a lot. It's like, I think we can forget that these people have the human experience that connects all of us, that all of these people have the thing in common that they have struggled, they have challenged, they have negative thoughts as they're busting through ceilings that have limited them in the past. And I loved reading your introduction because you talked about, I've always known you're an author, you're a storyteller, like this is where you are meant to be. But you talked about that journey, how big this has been for you in sharing your voice. And so I would love for you to speak a little bit on just maybe the times as an author that you could have felt yourself going back to playing small or playing the old way and limiting yourself and saying, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And then how did you bridge the gap between that and actually doing what I think a big part of you knows that you're here to do? Because whether or not someone listening has an author in them, I think that this concept applies in so much of everybody's daily life.
Yeah, there's a story that I share in like the first chapter actually, where this woman said to me, "You saved my life." And there was so many moments while writing this book, while in my practice, where I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. I don't know if this is my path. Is this my purpose? Is this where I'm meant to be? So those doubts start to really show up because of old patterning and not feeling enough. And when she said that, and she was telling me all of her experience through our work together, it's like that moment was very pivotal for me to understand that the work that I am doing is not about me. Like that really highlighted for me the concept of other, and how as a child, all I wanted to do was help others. Like that was, I knew that was why I'm here. I knew that is something that I wanted to do as a career. I just didn't know what that looked like. And I know the voice that I have now came from the challenges and the experiences and everything that I went through. And if I don't share it, I'm not living my purpose. And if I don't share it, or if I didn't share it with that one woman, I don't know what she would have done when she was feeling at her lowest. So for me, what's been helpful is to understand that we all have impacts on people in our lives, and if this is what I'm meant to do in this lifetime, then it's, I don't want to say the word duty, but it's like my privilege to say these words to help women understand themselves. And the other thing that I've always wanted to do as a child, so going back to like, really accessing what I wanted as a 5-year-old was to change the world. And I remember hearing from someone say to me, one person can't change the world.
Mm.
And so what I have learned now by really supporting women, because we are the first relationship to every human on this earth, and it's those humans that are making a lot of the decisions for this earth and how we interact and whether we go to war or not and all of that. It's like if I can support that woman and help her feel so whole, she is going to create that ripple effect in her family, which is going to create that ripple effect in the community and in the world. So one person can change the world.
100%. Yeah, I hear a calling and I hear something bigger than yourself,
Mhm.
right? Or bigger than us because it helps in those
Yeah.
moments. It's about me, but it's not about me, right? This is
Mhm.
coming through me for everyone around me.
So yeah, so even when it's funny because as we were doing the interview too, I'm like, "God, I don't think I'm articulating everything the way I want to, or I'm not saying it the right way." And that inner voice starts to show up because like I said, I'm living the book just as every other woman is. But when you start to speak to the heart, like you just did, it's like, well, it's not about me. It's not about how I sound. It's about what women are going to receive from this and the change it can create.
100%.
Mm.
And thank you for now you're going to make me cry, but showing up as real you because this is, we're living in the world that's very filtered. And edited, right? Like there's editing. And I think, the parts that are missing in so much of what we're seeing out there and online are the parts that actually do create the connection. And that's this. It's our imperfections, our insecurities. It's the barriers that we hit and how we choose to dig deep and work through and leaning on community and friendships and connections. So I love you so much. Thank you for, as always, beautifully, beautifully sharing your message. And everybody, like I said, grab her book, use the comments, use the feedback. I'd love to hear any questions that you guys have after this. I'll drop all of Dr. Sonya's info below so that you can stay connected to her as well. And I will see you next time.